Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Feyi Mac and I post videos about life in Canada as a Nigerian Canadian and how to relocate to Canada. If you're interested in that type of content, well, you're in the right place. So welcome. Thanks for clicking this video. I hope you actually stay and join the family. If you're curious about immigrants, about migrating to Canada, life in Canada in general, make sure you subscribe to this channel. It's going to be fun. Today's video is about comparing relocating to Canada as an international student versus relocating to Canada as a permanent resident. Okay, this is a highly requested video. There are a lot of people that just reach out and say, you know, Faye, this is my situation. What is the better option for me? Should I come as an international student or as a PR? Now, there's no easy answer to that question. If I've ever replied that kind of question, you know that I don't tell you what to do. I pretty much just say, you know, it depends. I'm going to give you the pros and cons of relocating as an international student versus coming to Canada as a permanent resident. Here are a couple of things you need to know. There are a few different reasons why a person would consider coming to Canada as an international student versus coming in as a permanent resident. First thing that I want you to know is dual intent is allowed. You're allowed to want to study in Canada and also want to stay back permanently in Canada, as long as you're staying within the confines of the law. In 2020, we all know that there was a major pause in, Express Entry's Federal Skilled Worker Program, where they were not actually conducting any draws for about 2 years. I reported that on this channel. And so for people who already had plans to relocate out of their home country and to Canada, it kind of threw a wrench in their plans if they were not already with their invitation to apply. So people that had their invitation to apply and submitted their applications, awesome. They still had a little bit of a delay due to the pandemic, but at the end of the day, many of those backlogs are being cleared. But for brand new applicants who were in the pool and waiting for the, draw so that they could be picked up and selected to actually apply, many of them just kind of shut down from this whole Express Entry idea because literally it was really, really slow and there were no draws for the Federal Skilled Worker Program, which is the major program through which immigrants or potential newcomers from outside Canada are able to apply to come into Canada. For that reason, people explored so many different options. Number one was the student route. The Canadian Experience class was also still inviting people for draws, and the PNP class, the PNP program was also inviting people for draws. So at the end of the day, it wasn't a complete pause, but it was a pause for the program that actually brings in majority of immigrants. Coming as an international student, one thing I want you to know, you probably know this, but there are a few people that still ask this. Am I going to still write IELTS or a language test if I come in as an international student? Not immediately, that's the answer. Most schools will waive the IELTS option for you. If you're from an English-speaking country, you can just reach out to them and tell them to waive it for you. However, once you're ready to become a permanent resident, you will still take the language test. Okay? You will still take the language test. So if your reason for running away from Express Entry is because of the language test, you will still take it. Please go back and watch my previous videos about IELTS. I demystified the whole thing. It's not that deep, okay? Now that's one. Number two, if you some people just don't even have enough points to compete in the Express Entry pool right now. And so when they come into Canada, they're able to now, come in as international students, get the degree that they need, settle down in Canada, even work in Canada, right? Because international students are typically eligible to work. So some people would prefer to just do that, get in first, get a foot in the door, and then figure things out after school or after graduation. But there are a few things that kind of make it a bit of a different pathway. Number one is family. As a Canadian PR, once you're approved, you're typically approved as a family unit. Even if it's just one person that was the primary or principal applicant, the rest of the family is still able to get their PR along with you, the principal applicant, as long as you include them in the application. Meanwhile, coming in as an international student, it's usually just the person who wants to study that gets that approval. Now, as an international student, you have the option of including your family as, people that are accompanying you to Canada. However, like, we know that is hit or miss. Some people have been successful with that, some haven't, probably because they don't have enough ties to their home country to prove that they're returning. So some people use their family as family ties to their home country. Well, some people just, apply, get their families included in the application, and then they all get it, and that's fantastic for them. But that's usually not as common as opposed to coming as a PR, where it's a given that your whole family is now coming as one unit, as permanent residents to Canada, versus, oh, I'm an international student and I'm also bringing my spouse who is going to be on a work permit, and my kids who may be on either a visiting visa or student visa, depending on your family situation, the children's ages and all of that. So there's that difference. And then there's also the difference of cost. Coming in as a permanent resident, I know a lot of people talk a lot about proof of funds and all of that. Yes, proof of funds is there, but that's not an expense to you. Nobody is taking the proof of funds from you. If they say, oh, family of 3 and proof of funds is this much, it's money that you just need to show that you can use to take care of yourself and your family. Nobody's taking that from you. So the only costs there are, application fees, police clearance, certificates, medical fees, all of those, which are still not even as high as tuition alone for international students, right? As an international student, you have the opportunity to apply for scholarships, which is fantastic. But majority of international students that come to Canada are not on full scholarships. So if you're coming in as a regular student without a scholarship, you're looking anywhere from $10,000 to like hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the program you're trying to take and how many years it is, coming as an international student. So that cost difference is really there. Meanwhile, if you already had plans to go to school, to further your education, get a master's or postgraduate diploma or certificate, if you had come in as a permanent resident, you would be paying domestic student tuition, which can be half or even 1/3 of the tuition that an international student pays. For me, another difference is the process for application. I personally believe that express entry is a bit more straightforward than coming in as an international student, because just like I did, I came in as an international student in 2015. I applied for my admission, I applied for my student visa, I applied for my postgraduate work permit, I applied for my permanent residency through express entry, and then I applied for citizenship when I got eligible in 2020, right? So at the end of the day, that's kind of a longer route. It takes more time. From the time that I landed in Canada as an international student to the time that I became eligible for citizenship, it was about 5 years, 2015 to 2020. That was the route for me. And for me, that was even fast because I didn't exhaust my 3-year postgraduate work permit before I applied for PR. I used experience that I already had prior. So it was even faster for me. For a lot of people, that's a 7-year journey, 8-year journey. So it really depends. Another difference as well is the kind of jobs that you might have access to. I know that some international students can get lucky and get like really good jobs right off the bat. However, there are a lot of jobs that would give priority to citizens first, and then permanent residents if they don't find citizens, and then everybody else after. There are some certain jobs that are more popular with international students, where it's more flexible, part-time, or seasonal and all of that, versus somebody that's a permanent resident and is available to work full-time and all of that. I know right now the Canadian government is allowing international students to work full-time. I think it's a temporary basis right now, but your number one commitment is still your studies, right? So at the end of the day, there are a lot of people who can manage to work and school full-time. However, a lot of people would rather just work part-time. So There's some jobs that are not really available for part-time, opportunities and all of that. So just keep that in mind when you're deciding. That's just something that you might experience when you come in as an international student versus coming in as a PR. Another major difference is benefits. So when you're coming in as a permanent resident, you're getting pretty much all the benefits of being Canadian, except, things like the right to vote and stuff like that. But when you come in as an international student, you're still a temporary resident, right? So there's some perks that you might not get. Keep in mind, the international students get a lot of perks. You can apply for GST rebates, you can apply for childcare subsidy, for daycares and things like that. But there's certain benefits like free healthcare, and also things like provincial educational grants and loans. For example, in Ontario, OSAP, if you as a permanent resident or citizen decide that you want to go back to school and your program is eligible for OSAP, you might get some money in grants and some in loans to help you support yourself while you're in school. So there's certain kinds of, federal and provincial benefits that are not accessible to international students. While there are some that are accessible to international students, some of the major ones are not. So that's one difference as well between coming in as a PR and coming in as an international student. Another difference is that when you come in as a PR, there's certain countries that you can go to visa-free as a permanent resident of Canada. Okay, if you want me to make a video about countries you can visit visa-free, let me know in the comment section below. Again, I came in as an international student, but I usually say this: if I had the opportunity to come in as a permanent resident, I would honestly have done that versus coming in as an international student. But I know that if I were to go back in time, I probably wouldn't have qualified for Express Entry. At that time, Express Entry was even brand new, so I didn't even know anything about it. So maybe not. But if I had the opportunity to, if I could get the points, if I could, get the proof of funds and everything, then yeah, I would come as a permanent resident because it makes sense to do so, right? It saves you money, it saves you time, it gives you the guarantee of your, it gives you peace of mind. You have your permanent residency status, right? But obviously, due to different conditions, one might have to come in as a student first, which is what I did, and then later secured myself as a permanent resident and a citizen afterwards, which is completely fine. So I can't really say there's one better way to come. It's just, whichever way that your condition or your situation allows you to come in is what it is, as long as it's legal, right? So yeah, if you're coming in as an international student first and like me, you're going to proceed through different statuses, that's completely fine. And yeah, I think it's a good plan. It's better than doing nothing if you already had plans to relocate anyway. This is by no means an exhaustive list. I'd love to hear your ideas. What do you think, coming in as a PR versus coming in as an international student? Did you come in as an international student? Did you come in as a PR? Let us know what your experience was and what your preference is. Well, I think I know your preference, but what your situation is and how it went for you. If you're an international student that has now become a PR or citizen, please share your experience. A lot of international students watch my channel. Let them read and be inspired by your story. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye.